Well, I would say, obviously it depends on what leverage we have in these countries, but, in cases such as Bahrain and Egypt, for example, where we have military relationships, that gives us a great deal of leverage when we speak to these governments. And here's my personal view, is that we shouldn't be in the business of funding authoritarianism. So if the government of Egypt, for example, is accepting $1.3 billion in United States assistance while telling the USAID that the few $1 billion, that $40 million or so that it provides for democracy promotion is illegal because it's not pre-approved by the government, we have the grounds for an excellent discussion with the Egyptian government. And I think there are some people on the Hill who would agree. So yes, I mean, me personally, I realize we have to balance our interests and our principles, but there are some cases where I think we should go a little bit farther than that.
I think this is going to be a very tough issue to deal with, because my reading is, and I was appointed to the head of the MFO by the governments of Egypt and Israel, and thus worked with the governments for 6 years, including specifically the military, the Ministry of Defense. But my reading is that the Egyptian military is not going anywhere. And they saw what happened in Turkey when the present government of Turkey absolutely emasculated the Turkish military. And the Egyptian military is not going to go down that path. You've probably seen reports already at a press conference that the Egyptian member of the SCAF held yesterday. It sets it out pretty clearly. And I frankly think that the Egyptian military will get a lot of broad public support in Egypt for maintaining its role. Some of you follow this might have heard, the Mubarak is gone, the Ministry of Interior is gone, and who's left to maintain security? And there's an inherent personal human need for security. If your kids go off to school, you expect them to come home. That's one of the horrible mistakes we made in Iraq. So the Egyptian military is going to be there, and so how do we deal with it? And Charles' point's exactly right. We're going to have to really sort that out very carefully. Just one last point on the brother, just there 11 minutes on the time. I think they're going to be very careful also to be being perceived as non-threatening by the United States and by broad swaths of Egyptian society that don't support the brotherhood. I think, above all, they want to show that they have the capability to actually govern, and to govern the country successfully. And to do that, of course, then they have to be a little bit more open to ideas and currents that they might not wish to impose. They'll have to deal with the Salafists also in a pretty clear-cut way. And so far, what they've said has been, I think, quite good. But they're going to want to try to show the world that they can govern in a responsible, reasonable way, successful way, including rebuilding the economy. Because recall, one of the real strengths of the Brotherhood has always been their ability to provide assistance, their ability to provide help in times of national crises and so forth, to show that they are responsive to the needs and the will of the people.
Let's take 3 questions at a time. We'll start with this gentleman here, and the questions.
Sure. Thank you all very much. I'm Zach Gold from Sponsor Brookings. I just had 2 very quick questions for Ambassador Williamson. In terms of the framework, you were saying that it seemed that carbon-producing countries had more stability, but it seems like there's something else that's legitimacy, because I would point to Libya versus Jordan and Morocco. So it seems more royalty than petroleum. And I was wondering if you could touch on that. But secondly, I guess there's been a lot of talk in the past year about petroleum findings and deposits in the Western Hemisphere and how that will affect the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, there's a global market, but with the Middle East being less of a vital strategic interest for the U.S.
Ken Odeway, former FSO. This is for Mr. Dunn. I wanted to suggest and get your opinion on whether, in view of our relatively declining political, economic leverage in the area, and even outside of special cases like Iraq and Egypt and Bahrain, even a declining possibility of using military force. And on top of that, an election year. Whether it might not, since our resources are so limited, and since there's so many factors working against us, and since the countries are different, why don't we go back to a renewed emphasis, strong emphasis on human rights, legacy of the much maligned Jimmy Carter. Human rights would give us the opportunity to coincide with other world powers. It would fit in with what we're saying to places elsewhere in the world, China and so on. It would probably reinforce the best aspects of the Arab Spring. And even the Islamists, as for the Islamists, it would offer us an opportunity to kind of keep them to the page. What do you think of a renewed emphasis on human rights? It could possibly even be popular as a foreign policy in America.
Thank you, and I'll take this last question, the gentleman with the
Michael Eben from the Near East South Asia Center. I'd like to go back and follow up on the conversation on democratic developments. We've had now elections in Tunisia, Morocco, and first round in Egypt, all of which have produced at least a plurality of Islamist party victories, if you will. One of the challenges, it seems, is how those Islamist parties are going to seek to collaborate with secular bodies in establishing effective government to address the jobs, dignity, justice questions. And the last builds on Art's point about the military, and noting the so-called Turkish model, although I would suggest maybe it's more demonstration effect, is that you can have a democratic Islamist government that can win elections and can govern more or less effectively and achieve economic development. But equally importantly, the true democratization of these countries is the establishment of effective civilian control of the military. We tend to go to a default too quickly, and I saw this in Turkey again and again, that it's only the national security establishment, the guys in uniform that we can really rely on, and therefore we endorse either explicitly but at least implicitly this authoritarian military modernization model that has prevailed across the region for so long. How do you get at that? Oh, and the last point is back to civil society and social networks. The NAVA network, which is a reflection of the young citizens movement across the Arab and Turkic world, is fascinating in terms of trying to bring together both Islamist and secular elements, albeit primarily middle and upper middle class, in addressing these governance questions. How do you see that playing out and producing this new political paradigm of perhaps an Islamist plurality, political structure, in collaboration with secular elements?
Let's start with Molly, for the first 2 seconds, then we'll move on to those broader questions.
Right, thank you. Hydrocarbons, countries with hydrocarbons being able to use their revenues to facilitate greater stability or demonstrate some responsiveness to concerns so that the kind of unrest we're seeing in the countries that don't happen to have those resources doesn't spread. And you rightly point out, what about Libya? Having the hydrocarbons isn't enough. It's what do you do with the revenues? It's what do you do with the money? And do you provide for, and are you seen to be providing for your people and their concerns, meeting their concerns or not? And I